It used to be a simple matter to say someone was a man or a woman, but not so much anymore. Gender ideology is driving a false narrative that gender is a social construct and essentially men and women are the same. Well, as believers, we know that's a deception, but how do we respond to that? Thankfully, we have the Word of God and the evidence that's in the created order. What does genetics have to say about the differences between men and women? We're going to find out. Joining me is Dr. Georgia Purdom, Vice President of Educational Content at Answers in Genesis. She holds a PhD in molecular genetics from Ohio State University, and her specialty is cellular and molecular biology. Dr. Purdom, welcome to the Stand Radio.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've written an outstanding article titled Men and Women's Different Biology Supports Their Different Roles. In that article, you point out that last year, the American Anthropological Association met for a conference, and there was a session that they had scheduled on the skeletal differences between men and women, but it was canceled because that would be considered transphobic. What is going on in the scientific community?
Well, absolutely non-scientific things. That's for sure. Because when I first heard about that, and then even went to the website for that organization to see like what are they saying about why they're canceling it, they actually said, and I'll quote, there's no single biological standard by which all humans can be reliably sorted into a binary male-female classification,
Wow.
end quote. And I read that and I'm like, oftentimes biblical creationists are accused of being not scientific. And
Yep.
I'm like, this is not scientific. Like, this is ridiculous. And I just read that and I think, yeah, there actually is a way that we can designate males and females, and that's through our chromosomes. And so I have a new favorite saying, okay, because if you're a female, you have two X's. If you're a male, you have an X and a Y.
Okay.
So it's very simple to remember. No Y, right? No Y chromosome, no guy. I mean, that's just the way it is. No Y, no guy. Now, I'm not saying there can't be sexual development disorders, and there can be people that suffer from things, and we need to have compassion on those people and help those people. But the chromosomes designate it, and they do help us know whether the individual is a male or a female. And there are differences, and those differences have a lot of impacts.
Yeah, just a casual look at some of the websites. The National Science Teaching Association, for example, has a resource titled Gender Inclusive Biology, a Framework in Action. I'm really concerned that not only are we departing from science, but this is going to have real world effects on our children in the primary, secondary schools. Just speak to that, if you will, about the effects that's going to have on people studying science.
Yeah, and you're right. It goes much beyond science, right? I mean, telling people that basically they need to be confused and they need to question. And you imagine teaching something like this to a kindergartner?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the level. It's not just at middle school and high school. This is happening at very, very young ages where these children are being told they get to pick, they get to choose, they get to decide. And it's not only things that go against their parents, but goes against the very creator God who created them as male or female and boy or girl for a reason and for a purpose. And you're telling them to deny that. And when you see a lot of these people that are coming out of that, they're detransitioning, like they bought into that lie and now they're not. You just hear their stories and their heartbreak because the whole time they knew something was wrong, right? In questioning this or transitioning. And so we just see the very negative impact that's having on many young people.
Well, let's get into some of the differences that you've written about that biology indicates between men and women. What are some of those?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. And we can talk about that at so there's like the genetic level, what I call the genetic level, which I talked about a little bit earlier with the chromosomes, but then you have even what's the outcome of that, kind of those genetics and how that changes. And, one of the things we saw it very clearly in the Olympics recently, where there were some questions about whether an individual in boxing was a male or a female. But my understanding of the chromosomal analysis of those individuals that were in question, they were guys. And that's why they're hitting really hard, because that's how they are designed. That's how their bodies work. I mean, they went through puberty, and so they have bigger muscles, bigger bones, better blood flow, bigger lungs. So especially in athletic competitions, you really see this, because even the worst so to speak, athletes that are male can beat some of the best female athletes just because, again, there's something that cannot be denied from a biological perspective.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Olympics because in personal conversations that I've had, it's come up that, well, we really don't know if this is a man or a woman because structurally, anatomically, it may indicate one sex, but in terms of chromosomes, it would indicate something else. But what you're saying is the chromosomes are the gold standard. That's what we go to determine male or female.
Correct. Yes, that
Yeah.
is the gold standard. That's really what we need to go by. And like I said, it can be difficult sometimes when children are born and there's indeterminate, sex organs or at puberty, there's issues. And again, we need to have compassion on those people and understanding. But in the day and age we live in, there's no reason not to have these chromosome tests and to understand whether the individual's a boy or a girl.
Yeah, that's good. That's very helpful. You also point out a 2017 gene activity study that revealed some startling differences in genetic activity between men and women. Could you sort of summarize that for us?
Yeah, so it was really amazing. So when they first did the study, they really thought, oh, there won't be that many differences between males and females as far as how active certain genes are that we have. So we have about 20,000 genes or so, 18 to 20,000 genes. And the study found that over 6,500 of those genes have different activities in tissues between males and females. So some genes are more active in men, some genes are more active in women. And so again, that gene activity is going to change biology, which is going to change, again, the outcomes and what they're able to do or not do.
You also pointed out in your article, and I'll get you to explain this, but we thought that there were some inactive genes in women, but it turns out that they're actually very active, and that was unknown before. Speak to that if you would.
Yeah, so women, because we have two X chromosomes, they thought one of those X chromosomes was inactive, basically, that it wasn't really producing anything, because then we would have, so males only have one X chromosome as well. And so so that makes sense. But then when they studied the silent X chromosome, they found out it's not so silent. So, and again, it accounts for some of those differences between males and females. They think about 23% of the genes on the silent X are actually active. And a lot of those they find out are involved in the immune system. And it may explain why women actually have better immune systems and better resistance to disease than men a lot of times.
Well, that is fascinating. Are you encouraged that as research continues to be done, that some of this just bizarre activity from the science institutions are going to be are going to fall apart?
I would hope so. I'm just amazed in the name of agenda, how a lot of this stuff is being done. And especially when you look at these surgeries that are being done on these young people and hormone treatment, it is the largest human experimentation done on children that is sanctioned by the government and many parents to date, and to my knowledge. And I do think there's going to be, we're already seeing some of that pushback. And I think we're going to continue to see it because we're going to continue to see the harm and the problems that it causes.
Yeah, of course, as believers, we know that there is a spiritual blindness that really is over the hearts of people. Dr. David Minton years ago spoke to that when he taught at Washington Medical School for 20 some odd years. And he just talked about the hardness of heart that a disbelief in God causes. So anyway, I'm glad you mentioned the genetic treatment to boys and girls, because I want to ask you about that. What kind of harm is being done when their gene makeup is driving their bodies in one direction and gender-affirming, quote, hormone treatment is pulling their bodies in a different direction? Do the God-given genes stop working, or do they continue to fight the drugs? What's going on in the body there?
That's a really good question that we need a lot more research on, because I think that's valid to ask, because basically if let's say it's a girl and her body is producing estrogen, let's say she's at puberty, right? And so her body wants to produce estrogen. That's what it's supposed to do. And then we block that. Basically, she's producing it and we're somehow blocking the ability of that hormone to do what it's normally supposed to do. And then we put another hormone in her, like testosterone. it's going to affect the expression of those genes because those sex hormones have a role in that. What that's going to do long term, again, this is all new. This is all experimenting, literally scientific experimentation on these people. And we're going to have to see what the outcomes are going to be. We already know some of those outcomes, like a lot of the women are losing bone density at very young ages. It's affecting the connections in their brains and the way their brains are developing. So we already know some of the negative effects, and I think we're going to continue to find out more.
At the end of your article, you quote Dr. Paula Johnson. She was with the Connors Center for Women's Health and Gender Biology, as saying, every cell has a sex. What does she mean by that?
Yeah, so every cell does have a sex because every cell has DNA, and except for red blood cells. But other than that, every cell does. And so it has an X if it's a girl, and an X and a Y if it's a guy. And those have a lot to do with sex hormone production, and that has a lot to do with how the regulation of the genes in those cells occurs. And like say, even when you go to the brain, women tend to have more connections between the hemispheres of the brain. Men tend to have more connections within the hemisphere. So it's affecting every brain cell and what it grows and what it does. And that's going to be true. That's why some medications will work better for women versus men and vice versa, and why they both need to be in medical studies, drug studies, because otherwise, why would you need that? But we need that because every cell is different. Every cell, we are made in the image of God, first and foremost, but every cell is male or female, and it affects who we are.
Well, these are dark days that we're living in, but I tell you, I'm encouraged because the truth will stand. I mean, God's word stands, and what he has created is going to proclaim that, is going to shout the truth. And so there's a lot that we can really ground ourselves in. And I just thank you for providing some of this.
Yeah, and that really is the hope that we have. That's why I say for all of these people that are transgender or homosexual, we need to have compassion on them. Yeah. They need, the key is Jesus Christ, the yes. gospel. Yeah. And we need to share that with them, and we need to help them know that there is hope in that.
Tell us about some of the conferences that are coming up, because there's a women's conference in 2025 and a men's conference. Tell us about both of those.
Correct. So our women's conference we've had for over a dozen years now. I get to direct that conference every year, and it's just my pleasure to be able to do that. And so we actually have 2 conferences for our women's conference. We have so many women coming that we've had to have 2 conferences now. So next year's is called Resolute: Refuting False Gospels with Biblical Truth. And so this is all about some of the New Age ideas, things like yoga, the New Apostolic Reformation, the Enneagram. We're going to talk about some of those things and talk about the false gospels really behind those. And so that's in late March, early April. And then we also have a men's conference for the first time. That will be in mid-March, called First and Last Adam: Blueprints for Men. For either of those events, you can go to the answersingenesis.org website, and you can click on events and find out more information about those.
Lots of exciting things going on at Answers in Genesis. Again, the website answersingenesis.org. If you'd like to find out more about our guest today, Dr. Georgia Purdom, and the many, many resources, the books and the DVDs that she has authored and produced, that too is available at answersingenesis.org. Dr. Purdom, it's been a pleasure to talk with you today. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.